For the past 11 years, I've been walking. I started in Africa, walked through the waterless deserts of the Middle East, the lush river plains of India, and across the towering snow mountains of China. My name is Poul Salopek, and I'm a National Geographic writer and explorer. I've now reached Japan. Walking for me is about finding something deeper, recording stories shared across borders and languages that hold meaning, connection, and the answers we often overlook. That's what being a National Geographic explorer is all about. National Geographic leverages the power of science, exploration, education, and storytelling to uncover and protect some of the world's greatest wonders. The lost city of Machu Picchu, the Titanic.
Sucker exists!
Unraveling the origins of mankind. Spearheading research on chimpanzees.
The fascinating thing is that so many of the gestures used by the chimps are the same as ours.
Since its founding in 1888, National Geographic has provided more than 15,000 research grants, supporting adventurers, scientists, educators, conservationists, and other changemakers around the world. Nat Geo explorers go further, dig deeper, and push harder to change something much bigger than themselves. There's a place for them to share their adventures and dreams. It's called the Spark. It's a forum, and also an opportunity to inspire a new generation. Since 2013, I've been retracing continuously, on foot, the ancient migration pathways of our human ancestors, one step at a time. Starting from the cradle of humanity in Africa, I plan to trek all the way to where our wandering forebears ran out of horizons, at the tip of South America. In our fast-paced world, my journey is about slowing down and listening to the ordinary people along my path who inhabit the big stories of our day, whether it's climate change, cultural survival, or technological innovation. Join us as we slow down and take the time to look closer and listen. One encounter, one story, one step at a time.
The next part of our fireside chat here tonight is going to be a panel discussion. And we're going to expand on the ideas and themes that we presented up here dealing with my project. We're going to kind of step out of my project a little bit to talk about how the idea of slowing down your life can add value to your life. And why is that? We'll be asking these questions on the next phase. So what I'd like to do now is invite my friends and colleagues, Daiko Matsuyama, who's the Deputy Chief Priest at Taizo Temple, to join us. And also Tina Koyama, who is the Director of Pieces of Japan. An innovative design effort that's marrying kind of high tech with preserving traditional systems of knowledge. So welcome Tina-san and Daiko-san. Yeah. What I'd like to do to start out is just to have each of you introduce a little bit about yourselves for our friends here. Daiko-san, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Thank you very much. So I feel very honored to be here. So my name is Daiko Matsuyama. I'm Deputy High Priest of Taizo Buddhist Temple. So our temple was founded in 1404, so around 600 years ago. And my grandfather was first one in my family. So I will be the third generation as a family succession. But the temple has more than 600 years histories. And I was born as an elder son, raised as an heir to the temple. But I studied at a Catholic school for 6 years. I had 6 years Christian education. And then I went to Tokyo University in a graduate school. And after that, I trained in a Heirinji monastery for almost 4 years. And it is located in the Saitama prefecture, and came back at the age of 28 to Kyoto. And so I'm appointed as the Goodwill Ambassador of Tourism of Kyoto now. And also, I'm doing a lot of interface dialogue between different religions. So I'm very much looking forward to the conversation with these.
Great. He's a bridge builder. Yeah, this is great. Tina-san, what about you?
Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Tina Koyama. I'm based here in Kyoto as well. I'm originally from Switzerland. Actually, my mother is Japanese and my father is Swiss. So I'm born and raised in Switzerland. I then came to Tokyo. I worked in tech. So I studied design, but I was always fascinated by design and tech. So I came to Tokyo and worked in the tech field and realized Silicon Valley is really where the digital technology was flourishing. So moved to the US, Silicon Valley, had worked there for a bit. And then family is what brought us back to Japan. My husband's family is from Kyoto. My mother is from Kyoto. And when we decided to move back, I reflected on what I would want to do here in Kyoto. And I left tech and started focusing on the traditional craft industry here. And my background is in user experience, R&D of digital technology, but I am now applying it to the traditional craft industry with the mission of revitalizing the traditional crafts of Japan. There's a lot we can do. And ultimately, Japan as a society is not able to support the traditional crafts community anymore. So I created a brand that creates mostly home interior items made with traditional crafts techniques, but targeted towards the international audience that seems to have much more interest and also financial, capacity to support the crafts. And I've been doing that for 5 years now in Kyoto with a strong team of very interesting international people, Japanese and very international people, my team.
It's incredible. I'm eager to hear more because you've had a foot in each world of a career that has an extraordinarily high metabolism tech, right? Which is like nanoseconds. And you've moved into, again, pursuits and traditions that date back centuries, and you're bridging them, you're using both, which is very innovative. That's fantastic. This idea of slowness is so big and so it's a huge topic, and we have 40 minutes to talk about going fast. We were talking earlier about finding points of connection between everything that we do. And the first one that I'll just mention is that there's an obvious one, Daiko-san, in terms of walking. We have that in common because I understand you took a very long walk as part of your training as a monk.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about that walk, where it went, and also what you learned from it?
Okay. So in our sectors, we have a custom to walk back from the monastery to the home temple. So I trained in a Heirinji monastery in Saitama prefecture. It's around Tokyo suburban area, but I took, there's two paths. So mountainous way and the sea path. And I took the mountains. And I took, it was 400 miles, so 600 kilometers. From there to here, I took that path by myself, alone. No money, nothing to eat, nowhere to sleep, and asking shelters and food for the people along the path.
How old were you?
28.
Wow, okay.
And it took me 28 days. And I learned a lot from there. And so on the way back to Kyoto, so in Buddhism, there is a very important trainings, which is called as takuhatsu. So it is a Buddhist begging trainings. So I think in the West, begging is not good things, right? But in Buddhism, begging is very, very important to appreciate or realize that we are dependent.
It sounds like you made yourself very vulnerable, right? Because, I mean, I at least have I have cash in my wallet, so I can stop at a convenience store with, and get something. But you're throwing yourself at the best nature of strangers, right?
Yeah.
Completely. Generosity drives that journey.
And so as I said, on the way back to Kyoto, I was asking the begging trainings. But actually, I had those huge donations from the people on the path. So I think I feel very, very, I guess, generosity and the kindness of the people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, that would hint at a great hunger, right? Yes. Something, right? Yeah. Whatever you want to say, Buddhism or meaning, right? That's really encouraging. What an encouraging story. Tina, I think you've grown up. Is it like third culture kid? Is that sort of, have you heard that phrase before? Or you don't apply labels or?
Yeah, but I don't know the categories.
Kind of multicultural.
Yeah, I would say so in a way. Yeah.
How do you find moving across? This is a question that we were going to talk about. Is like, how does culture change? How do you see? I'll throw that question around. How do you see culture changing in your travels? You've done this amazing thing of switching careers, but like taking the goodness of one career and innovating it for a new one across technology, across disciplines, but also across cultures.
I mean, I can only really talk about 3 cultures, I would say. Growing up in Europe, specifically Switzerland, which is an interesting country. It's actually it's a farmer's country. There's no royalty. There was no, elevated people in Switzerland. It was a country made through union, and so it was a very down to earth community that I grew up in. That has a lot of respect for history as well, and beautifully preserves a lot of the history and the nature. And then I moved to Japan, which I always felt more drawn to for some reason, where I witnessed, what is it? There's a lot of contrast in Japan, like Tokyo, the big city versus the historical Kyoto, the young people versus the old. There was just some fascination, and also the culture that just always fascinated me, that I'll probably talk about more later. And what was also interesting just to see in the US then was there's not a lot of old culture. It's a young country, and seeing the gap between like a lot of history, not so much history, or like the backbone of Switzerland with like this kind of conservative but like innovative field. There's so many interesting aspects that it's hard to like talk about one. But the US was also interesting. It made California I felt like very like accepted the way you are. In Switzerland, I feel like you need to fit in a certain way. You have to. And then in Japan also.
Even without kind of an aristocratic hierarchy.
Yeah. Even then, there's like certain expectations in society. And California was really refreshing to me because of, I think, the youth of the country and also the diversity of the country. You could be anyone and you could have any religion, any background. And then the American dream was fascinating to me, of like, you can be anyone. Yeah. And also you work hard to achieve that. Yeah. This ambition. Yeah. So I feel like ultimately there's just so many takeaways, but there's like these values that are in Switzerland, and there are other ones in Japan, and then other ones in the US that I feel like I bring with me and I value deeply, and that shape what I do. But they're too multifaceted to summarize in a short way.
You hold universes inside of you. It's just
just 3 cultures, right? I can't imagine how hard. I mean, words are your job, but you've traveled through so many countries and cultures and you've summarized them beautifully today, some takeaways, but.
Well, talking about seeing culture change, you've kind of leapfrogged across the world.
Yes.
It's spent lots of time, which is it's not too different from what I do. My leapfrog is a footstep. Yours might be like an intercontinental flight. But with seeing what you see and what you experienced on your pilgrimage, Daiko-san, 80 centimeters by 80 centimeters, which is more or less what my stride is, the only difference I would say is that it gives me a sense of deep time. In other words, when people say, what do you think of the culture between, I don't know, Northeast India and Southern India or Central India? Or what do you think about the culture change between Southern China and Northern China? And I'm understanding also here in Japan, between kind of East and West Japan, there's also some old cultural differences. When you're walking through them, of course, there are no hard boundaries. They're like this. You're passing a boundary that's like stitched together, and you might go into one valley that might have a little bit of a kind of a linguistic difference, and you go and the other one has an older one. And so you see it a footstep at a time. What that does for me, and maybe it's just the way my brain is wired, is it emphasizes to me the temporariness of what we call culture. It emphasizes to me that sort of, I don't know, there's something strange about walking across continents. I'm a word guy and I still can't explain it very well. I wish I could, but you are slowed down for so long that all these machines that are whirring in you are slowly kind of running out of gas, and they go do. And then another one goes do. And suddenly you're kind of silent, right? And you're walking through landscapes. When you're not engaging with people, which is what my project is about, the other side is you're alone. You are alone with your thoughts. And walking encourages you to think. I'm writing when I'm walking and taking notes, saying, here's a better idea for a sentence. But it also tends to make the landscape, because you're moving so slowly, the landscape takes on what I call sacramental time. It's this ancient time that is before even people were here. And sometimes, this is going to sound a little odd, but like when I walk into a big city, I'll see how it is with Kyoto. I'm like 5 days out. When I walk through a big city, have you seen those movies where it's fast motion and there's like a person who's frozen in a big intersection and the cars are whirring, the colors? That's what it feels like to walk into a big city when you spent months in the countryside. I almost feel like a ghost. My point is about culture, is that culture seems to move that way too. It's strange. It feels like it's a river that's always churning by. And that what I think is like American right now is an eye blink. Now, I can't say about Japan because I've not been here that long. Japan, Asia have much deeper core samples of time. But what I do see, for example, like migrating on foot from China to South Korea to Japan are many similarities, many overlaps in history, in religion, philosophies, and even in this question of depopulated landscapes. China was halfway empty. Its countryside was like halfway empty, but there was still some economy. There'd be like a mom and pop shop. The post office would still be open, but the village was half empty. Crossing through South Korea, the village was like 2/3 empty and the post office had closed and there was just a mom and pop shop. Walking through rural Japan, the post office and the mom and pop shop are closed and maybe it's 80 to 90% empty. So walking has afforded me seeing the gradations of a common human experience, right? And that gets me to deep thinking about what's next, right? Well, where do we go from here?
So, Buddhism, there's a very important teachings of the wisdom, 3 wisdoms. First one is study history, Bibles, and languages. And the second is the reflection. If you get informations, don't accept it without doubt. So reflection, why do we have to do this work? So I think this is very important as something to do with walking, right?
Yes.
And if you have any beautiful teachings in your mind, if it is kept in your mind, it's just information.
Yeah.
So we have to apply the teachings in the everyday life, real lives.
Right.
So I think what is missing for the people in this time, in this era, is reflection. So I think the walking is a very important time for the reflection. And also, from 2018, I'm appointed a visiting lecturer at Stanford. And so many students says that I'm goal-oriented. Right? Many students say. So every time I go to the home campus, I go straight to the bookstore and check the bestsellers, what they're reading. And last time I was there, so the title of the bestsellers was ChatGPT, AI, and mindfulness. I think it shows many students suffering, right? So of course, to reach goal is very exciting, but it's also exhausting.
Yes.
So if you reach goal, you have to set another goal and always chase by some goals. And walking, of course, we have goals to reach the Argentino, the Chile,
right.
And for me, the Kyoto.
Yes.
But I could take the longer path, or I could stay 2 nights, 3 nights.
That's right.
So it's free.
That's right.
But so I think this kind of the enjoying the path is so this kind of a sense is missing.
Yes.
And I always say that. So in Buddhist temples, so our gardens are created around 500 years ago. For more than 500 years, always everyday maintenance, no goal. Right? But involving this kind of activities enriches the mind. So we're missing the value of these things.
What I hear you saying is time.
Yeah.
The appreciation of time. Valuing patience. The power of waiting to have a reward. These things are shrinking. And the beautiful art that your artisans are restoring, for example, which you showed me, there's time in it. You hold this object in your hand, you can see this. You were telling me it takes a lot of polishing, it takes a lot of energy, hours. You can feel it. When you walk perhaps in your temple, you feel the time. That you can exhale. When I walk on my project, I can go. Doesn't mean I'm not anxious. I'm nervous like everybody else, but the appreciation of slowing down, at least for parts of your life, right? I'm not advocating certainly that you kind of go walk across the earth or, go to sleep. I'm saying use slowness as a tool to achieve this reflection that Buddhism teaches, to achieve the appreciation for something beautiful that has time cupped in it. That cup held time. Which leads me to a next line of questioning is, how is Kyoto cupping time, right? How does Kyoto's culture hold on to this slowness that we value and we know we want? We say, I see it, I want. How does it do that?
So I think the culture of Kyoto is, like I said, as you said, we can wait. And one of my friends, he's a mathematician. And so same age, and one of the closest to the Nobel Prize scientists in Japan. And he said that he graduated from Kyoto University, and he was always thinking of only one equation, but he took 15 years to solve it. But nobody complained it, except for his wife. So I think this kind of the culture is very important for the deeper, like I say, appreciation and the philosophy and the culture. So we can wait. And the sense of time is very long. Super long time visions. And for example, our Buddha hall was built around 430 years ago. But in carpenter's world in Japan, there is a saying that, so we cannot say they are good carpenters if the buildings will not stand for the modern age of the wood. So we are using 1,000 years old cypress trees. So it means we have more than 500 years to go. So we have this kind of the sense of the time. So I think the philosophy, culture, we can wait. I think this is very important. Yeah.
That's lovely. I can't wait to come here on foot. Tina-san, what about with the work that you do?
Yeah,
why Kyoto? Is it because of this slowness? Is it?
I mean, Kyoto, we came for family, so there was a connection through both my mother and my husband to Kyoto, but I'm in the traditional craft world now, and it's fascinating. Even Kyoto City, I think they have this award for companies that last over 100 years. And I think in Kyoto, even 100 years is not that old. And, you know, so there's so much respect and again, like beyond our lifetimes, right? I think that's the beauty about a lot of Kyoto is like the time is so long that we think beyond our own lifetime. And me too, like this is now, I've decided this is my life work because I would like for the traditional crafts to last beyond their current generation to the next. And I see it as my job to help that through my somewhat maybe, you know, bicultural background. But that's really, and the time's definitely slower in Kyoto. And one thing that I think is interesting is I think a lot of young people move to Kyoto with the intention of slowing down. And actually, I often say Tokyo, like New York, is a city of career, making money. And then all of a sudden, I think at one point around maybe when you have family, you realize it's not about money. And it's more about time and your maybe dream and your happiness. And I do think a lot of people that live in Kyoto, not travel to Kyoto, but live in Kyoto, crave the connection to nature, and they are beyond the money and beyond, and they hope to just do something simple with what they can do and settle down and achieve more of a just community and happiness in Kyoto. And I'm very inspired by the entrepreneurs of Kyoto. There's a lot of entrepreneurs too. One thing I also like to mention is Kyoto doesn't have a lot of big companies where you can work. So there's a lot of people just creating their own way of living, their own work out of zero. So I'm very inspired by the entrepreneurial community here, more than I was in Tokyo or Silicon Valley, to be honest, because it's not the money, it's not the exit, it's not the retirement that they're driven by, but more than that.
What you're saying is what we talked about yesterday is like I come back to slowness is like there's this quality about it that adds richness to your life. Like they've come to Kyoto to be entrepreneurs. They could be entrepreneurs in New York, but there's something added, kind of a secret sauce here. That what I'm hearing is community, you know, friendships, things that take time. You know, it's this, like I mentioned with my project, the slow food movement, you know, slow journalism, slow storytelling. You take time to prepare something, which is your life. You put in good and nutritious ingredients, right? Which is reflection, thoughtfulness, friendships, your neighborhood, other artists, and you get great food, right? That, you know, is better than fast food. And it sounds like Kyoto is sort of that, has that baked into it.
I was also curious, you've seen, you know, I mean, Japan is ultimately, a lot of culture from Japan, as you said, comes from China through Korea to Japan. And there's a lot of shared culture. I see that too, the more I deep dive into it. But I'm curious, is there something you see in Japan that you think you can recognize as the reason for why so many people are so fascinated into the Japanese culture? A lot of tourism is in Kyoto, like so much. So I think there's a lot of interest in culture. Did you see anything?
I'll just tell you honestly, and it's with the huge caveat that I'm like 8 weeks walking through northern Kyushu in a very remote part of southern Honshu. But my tiny keyhole is, it's got to come back to something that the elegance of it, the seeming simplicity. And I think maybe would we agree that simple things are often the hardest to achieve, right? Because we want to make them complicated. That, I think, taps into people's quality meter. Like something vibrates in them when they see a beautiful piece of Japanese art. It's so elegant, it's so simple. But it may be, and I'm being like a big promoter of slowness and time, but it also is inhabited by this aesthetic of time, of quietness, of spending time to reflect, that maybe people fly here from across the world because that shimmers in the temples, or that shimmers in the artwork. This notion of a Japanese quality of focus, of peace, of kind of harmony between humans and nature, all these things that require slowness. That would be my kind of take on it. I don't know. What do you say? I mean,
I would love to actually ask
Oh.
Sam, because I think a lot of interest is around Japanese philosophy, and I think I'm curious.
I think so. For example, so some 10 years ago, I had a guest from Switzerland. So at that time, she was only female board member of the IOC, International Olympic Committee. And we have meditation together in the temple. And after that, I asked her the question, so can you recognize the difference between Japanese archery and the Western archery? And of course, tools are different, but the fundamental is totally different. So the biggest difference is that in Japanese archery, the goal is not to get the target. So in Western archery, the goal is to get the target. I have never done it before. It must be very, very difficult. But I happen to get the target. It's okay. Because the goal is to get the target. But in Japanese archery, if I happen to get the target, it's nothing. So in Japanese archery, we use a bow and arrow and try to have the right posture, right breathing, right form, and try to elevate the state of mind to the highest. So the target is just a confirmation of the state of mind. So I think that the basis of Japanese culture is this philosophy, not to get the point, not to beat somebody, but self-cultivation or self-development. So if we have time to conflict with others, just, like I said, refine yourself or something like that. So I think this culture is very important, especially in Kyoto. We have this kind of the philosophies. Yeah.
it's strong here. Tina, do you have anything to add?
I'm just, I think I only represent a lot of craftspeople, right? Like I'm trying to be the vessel that they can use to, create a business. But I do feel there's a trend around craft. And I feel like people are drawn to the way of life of the craftspeople ultimately. And that's why it's so interesting. I was like, in America, I'm like, oh, everyone's so ambitious. That's why the economy is booming. And in Japan, everyone lacks ambition. Like, why is no one ambitious? But then at the same time, like, what's the goal? And then I realized everyone just wants to exit and retire. And I'm like, wait. And then what do you want to do in your retirement? And then I think people just want to become a craftsperson. I really, really think everyone ultimately just wants the money to become maybe a farmer or a craftsperson. And I really feel people long for that life. And crafts is a very beautiful manifestation of the relationship between the human and nature, because it's the simplest form of interaction that is also useful. Because I actually purposely call our people craftspeople and not artists, because it's about the technique and the multi-generation, the lasting of it. And craftspeople make something functional, whereas artists often, it's about expression.
Put your hands on.
Yes.
That's important.
And it's fascinating. I love this space and I learned so much, but I really feel like we're able to do this business because people long for this connection that maybe the craftspeople and Japan maybe even too represents.
I'm so gratified to hear both of you talk, because unknowingly I've integrated Japanese aesthetics into my project, because especially young people, students, is I say, the journey is the destination, right? And I tell my readers saying, hey, when you're getting to Argentina, saying, my friends, I may never get to Argentina. I reserve the right that if I wake up one day outside of Kyoto in somebody's house and the walk is no longer interesting or rewarding, I will say it is finished at this spot. So I'm sort of Japanese, I guess, in a certain way. Tina, can we pick up something that your company has helped birth? You've brought some things to share.
Well, it's one of the industries that's actually very specific to Asia, is the lacquer industry. And we do handcrafted things. And the first thing that came to mind when I started the business was like, we're going to ship these things to like the US or Europe. What if they break? I don't want them to be thrown away. And there's this beautiful thing that was already trending. It's kintsugi. It's a really big trend now in the world. And I think, again, it's a very philosophical trend, actually. It's about repairing broken things and giving them life back, but in a beautiful way. This here, you can maybe see it's a golden repair, but at the core of it is a traditional craft of lacquer. And so it's actually, lacquer is brown.
Okay.
And this is red lacquer on which the gold will come. And this is something that we've started sharing more with our international community, because it was often misrepresented and like kintsugi, people thought it was like epoxy glue with some gold powder on it, but that's not what it is. It's urushi lacquer, which is a tree sap, and it takes a minimum of a month to repair one thing. But urushi becomes stronger over time. So in 100 years from now, urushi will be stronger than now.
Wow.
And it's this beautiful thing that we've started teaching, and people didn't even in Japan really know this lacquer restoration too deeply because it's so time consuming, but we teach it now to international people, and you might have seen a photo of people learning this. And it takes 2 months. It's a residency where they learn this slow craft of restoration. And it's interesting how interested the international community is in, again, slowing down and taking time to restore. And it's been really great because ultimately I hope it helps the mindset, of people to cherish things that are broken, but also revive the urushi industry, which again is in a very, very steep decline.
How did you find, if I could take a look, how did you find people who still remember how to do this? Was it difficult or? Not
in Japan, and it's interesting. I think we even talked about this the first time we met. I think you told me how Japanese craftspeople around urushi lacquer often are asked to come to China. Because in China, the craftspeople, I think you told me about this, right?
They're trying to acquire this knowledge. Reacquire it.
So we still have a lot of craftspeople in Japan that are masters of lacquer. And
is the lacquer, it's hard to tell. Is it really translucent? Does light penetrate?
It's beige. It's like a beige mix. It's not translucent.
Okay.
Yes. It's
so it
usually
has
beige.
Pigment in it,
And the red has bengara, originally inspired by, it's a clay red mixed into the urushi. And it takes a week to cure in between layers. But it's about cherishing, right? Handmade pieces. And it can even be a Hasami porcelain manufactured cup that you value, but it's about valuing what you have, and even when...
And it brings to mind a quote from that old writer Hemingway, who said, "Life breaks everybody, but we are strong in the broken places," right? So this is sort of what's happening here. Beautiful. It has the history of the vessel. It's broken and had this trauma, and now it's healed. Beautiful. Beautiful work. This notion of harmony, this idea of people flocking to Kyoto as a destination culturally, but also lifestyle. And Daiko-san, your pursuit of kind of thoughtfully, reflectively, quietly, dare I say, slowly kind of building bridges. How do you see Japanese culture as promoting harmony? Or Buddhism promoting harmony? Harmony, the issue of harmony.
So, of course, Buddhism is very important keys to promote the harmony in the society of Kyoto, and hopefully to the world. But as Tina-san said, that the Kyoto has more band with the people and the relationships, but it comes gradually weaker. This kind of relationships with the people and the societies. But so the religion is very important key to have this kind of relationships with the people, and we have to promote, and we have to tell the value of these kind of relationships. And 3 months ago, I had a guest from California. She is the principal of Haas, the business school of UC Berkeley. And she said that she saw lots of successful people, but very few people who were happy, really happy. So I think so the relationships and especially so life is something like this. So when you're happy, good condition, I think you think that you can live alone or something. But when you go down, you need help. So in this kind of a case, we need the support by the people. So I think especially the people in the urban lives, urban cities, so they lack of this kind of a sense. So Kyoto is also gradually moving to the direction. So we have to promote again the relationship, the importance of the relationships. Yes.
Going back to the most basic, right?
Yes.
Which is about harmony is how you get on with the other, right?
Yes.
Whoever that other is.
Yes.
Connection, which again requires time and reflection.
Yes.
You can, and all of us do, increasingly have relationships that are distracted with relationships. But it sounds like here.
I think it's a good hope that, so I think in the whole world, so not religious, but spiritual generations growing, right? So in No Temple, so last year we accommodated around 30,000 students coming to the temple to enjoy meditation. So the number is growing. I think that this is a very good chance for them to value the time for the reflection and for the slow. So we have to take advantage of this kind of the tendency.
With that thought, it kind of wraps up Kyoto and I guess Japanese philosophy all in one nice bundle of why this place is so attractive. I think all of us, hope to tap into some element of what we're talking about. I think you much more successfully, of course, than me. But even walking, when I meet a stranger, a 76-year-old farmer who has not left her home in Kyushu, and she's out in the same field that she worked in her whole adult life, and she sees me in Soichi, and we tell her what we're doing, and I don't always tell people that I've walked from Africa, right? It gets too long of a story, it's too overwhelming. It's like then it takes all the oxygen out of the conversation. But when we do tell people, the average reaction goes through kind of 4 stages. One is first disbelief. They just don't believe it. The second is when they finally are convinced that it's true, they start laughing. And it becomes a point of hilarity. It's funny. It's like we're kind of clowns to be walking here. But the last one almost always is longing. There's a little kind of light in their eye that says, I wish I could do that. I wish I could hold vessels or repair vessels. I wish I could take a pilgrimage or sit and meditate or appreciate the moment, right? In that sense, our pursuit is all a walk. It's one step at a time. And it's somehow, for me, I'll speak for myself, marvelous that I don't know where the next step is going to be, and it's okay. Living with uncertainty, right? Living in a changing world that's getting more and more kind of changing more quickly, naturally and sociologically and politically. To be able to have a space, it appears that Kyoto is one of these spaces where you can exhale and at least appreciate the moment before taking the next step is important. Thank you all. Go out and take a walk. That's my advice. Thank you.